Hello you guys, I'm back and I'm going to talk about in this video uh things that happened prior to me finding out what he had and what he has and things of that nature. So when I first found out what he had, he was 6 months. So when I had him from the age of 1 month to the age of 6 months, when I found out what he had, it was nightless, sleepless nights. I did not sleep at all, and I did not miss a beat. Because when we in the military at the time when I was in, when you have a child, you get 6 weeks postpartum time off to do whatever you need to do. At the time, the dad wasn't there, and I had to start looking for daycare and things of that nature. So and still in the military, so I still had to go to PT. I still had to go to work. I was never late. I always went, and he never slept. He didn't eat. I thought he was colicky, so I changed his milk. I took him to the hospital. They said he wasn't. I had to, like, when he did eat, he only ate a little. So I was like, oh my goodness, he's not eating like that. He cried all the time. He barely slept. Like when he slept, he'll sleep for a little and he'll wake up. And in the beginning, I thought it was normal. So I was like, oh, baby was on sleep for 2 hours. But he was like really like sleeping for like an hour or so. And I know each kid is different. Each kid goes through their own sleep patterns. But he never slept. Ken never slept. He literally would go to sleep, eat a little, and cry. So I'd be up, and by the time it was time for me to like go to sleep, I had to wake up to go to work, to get him dressed, get myself dressed, go to PT, drop him off at daycare, which Miss Kenya in Loving Hands in Oklahoma, she is the best. And I'll explain why later. Maybe not in this video, but maybe in another video. But he didn't sleep, he didn't eat, and it was just me and him. And at the time, I thought it was like normal. And then me taking him to his checkups and things of that nature, they said he was fine. Everything seems normal, things of that nature. He did not, he was smaller. They say he was smaller in stature, and they asked me, how tall is it, Dad? And you, but I told them, I didn't eat that much when I was pregnant. So they took that into consideration. And then I told him he didn't eat that often. And they told me to change formulas and all things of that nature. And I would have breastfed, but it took me a minute to breastfeed. And I may tell that story later on. I don't know, maybe. But it was hard for me to do that. I couldn't. Like, mentally and emotionally, I couldn't. So I ended up finding a formula that worked for him, that he did not, throw up or have a hard time with. But he didn't eat. He ate and it stayed down. He just didn't eat as much as I see, like how much a child should eat now by having 2 other kids. But me going to the doctor, that was like, oh, okay, so it may just be you, tripping or being over dramatic. They say he's fine, so he's fine. But so when he turned 6 months, St. Patrick's Day, not gonna forget, is when I actually found out. So prior to that, like I said, a week or two before that, one of my sisters had came down, like to help me with him. And she came down, she babysat him. And I could tell it was like taking a toll on her too, because, she wasn't getting any sleep. And by the time you get off work at 5:30, and then sometimes I had like, we had training and where you'll be in the field for like a week or so. And that was the happiest. Like when they said, oh, we got a field, we're going to be in the field for a week, I was happy. Usually I'm not gonna be happy to go to the field. I don't want to go to the field. I want to bathe every day. I want to go home every day. And then in the field you sleep, but you really don't sleep. But mind you, since I had him, I was not able to sleep at all. I really probably got like an hour a day, and I still had to go to work. And with me, you really not gonna know what's wrong with me unless I tell you. So I'm still at work every day, still on time, still doing everything that I'm supposed to do, but I'm mentally and physically drained. But in my mind, I'm thinking like, it's motherhood, you new to this, you know, he's a baby, get over it. So when they said I was going to the field, I couldn't have packed my bag fast enough. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to the field. I can get 5 days to where I can just get 3 to 4 hours of sleep straight. And that's literally all I got, because you got training, you have to wake up, you have to do God duty. So you're not gonna get like a full 6, 8 hours sleep. You probably gonna get 4 or 5 at the most, and you're gonna go on and do what you need to do. So when I slept, that was the best sleep of my life. And I felt like a boost of energy. So when I got back, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to, you know, give my sister a break. I'm going to find daycare. And I'm going to put him in daycare because he's almost 6 months at this time. So I felt like it was the best thing, you know, to do. And that way she's here, she can get on her feet. She can, you know, get her GED and start working and start driving and things of that nature. So that was the plan that I had in my mind. I was like, okay. So when I went to the field and I came back, my sister was like, Ken did a movement. And I was like, what type of movement? And she was like something like a jerk. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, it may be normal, you know, babies growing into themselves, they still flinchy. So I took him to the doctor and they was like, oh, that's normal. You know, he's still growing into his body, things of that nature. So, okay. But like 2-3 days later, he did it again. And I seen it for myself. So I was like, that's weird. So I was like, I'm taking him back. So I took him back to the hospital. And I was like, you know, he did it again. I know you guys said it was normal, but it don't seem like, as a mother, you know, it just didn't seem right. It seemed like something was off. And then on top of the fact that I'm just putting everything in my head, like he don't eat like that. He's still small in stature. He really didn't gain any weight. Like something's wrong. So I asked them that, took him to the hospital. They said what they said. So I was like, okay. But then 2 days later, it happened again, but it was like more of a cluster. And I was like, what is, like, why he doing, like, why he flinching his body together? Like it was just contracting together like this, like his shoulders and his feet was like coming together. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I was like, I said, did he fall or anything, you know, while I was there? She was like, no, he didn't fall. He was just trying to go to sleep. He nodded off and he did that. And I noticed, so I told you. So I was like, okay. So when I took him back to the hospital, you know, they did tests or whatever the case may be. And I was like, I feel like something's wrong. I said, I don't think this is normal. Like, can you guys just like do something else, check something else, something like a test or something? I said, because something just seems wrong. So they was like, you know, no, this is normal. His reflexes are good, things of that nature. So within those 2 weeks, from the week that I came back from the field in the military to the 2-week time frame to where I found out what was actually wrong. So, sorry. So in the process of the last 3 days from the last time I took him to the hospital to the final time I took him, I noticed that his eyes started to cross a little bit, and he didn't want to hold, because he was in the process of like holding his bottle. It was like he didn't know how to hold his bottle anymore. He didn't want to hold it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna hold it. And then he was, you know, starting to babble and say like little small words like, wow, you know, just like a normal noise that a 6-month-old baby would start to make. But he wasn't saying anything anymore. It was just like he was quiet, and all he'll do is just like when he started to go to sleep, it was like something scared him. Like if you waking up from a bad nightmare and you just get startled, or someone like coming in the house and they startle you, that's how it was. And he'll just start crying. So I just like pet him up. He'll look at TV. He'll look at Babies First, Harry the Bunny, his favorite Harry the Bunny. He will watch that. He wouldn't cry. I'll be up with him, and I'm like, I gotta go to PT at 5, and I didn't sleep. And that day we had run day. And the girl that I was cool with, that I went to basic training with, we ended up being at the same duty station. She ended up having her daughter on my birthday, we was pregnant together, but she was pregnant before me, of course. And she ended up having her daughter on my birthday. And we was just running in pregnancy PT because we couldn't go like straight back to regular PT. It's 6 months of pregnancy PT, and then you go back to regular PT. So we was in pregnancy PT together, and we was just running, and I just felt like overwhelmed, and I felt like I just had to say something. So we was running, and she was like falling back, and I was like, and I fell back with her out of formation when I say fall back. And I was like, I think something wrong with Ken. And she was like, why you say that? And we just running. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like it is. I feel like something's wrong. She was like, oh no, he'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And in the back of my mind, I was like, no. But trying to be positive and think about the good versus the bad, I was like, okay, you're right. Maybe I'm being old dramatic. Maybe parenthood is way more than what I expected it to be, and I'm not, wasn't given the easy hand, and I just have to deal with it. Okay. So we was running. I said what I said to her. The next day, he did it. We was going. I had got him dressed for St. Patrick's Day, and we was going to Walmart. I put him in his car seat. We was going to Walmart, and I was rolling him in. We literally went through the first doors of Walmart, and he did it again in a cluster of 3. So I was like, oh no. So I turned right back around, put him right back in the car, and I went home because I was like, I have to research. I have to know what I'm talking about when I come in here, because I do not want them to tell me the same thing that they've been telling me. No, I don't want to. And this time I also didn't go on post. I went to the hospital near me, Southwestern. I went there. But I went home. I left him in his car seat. He was asleep at the time. And I Googled like the symptoms that he was having and things like that. So 2 things came back. And I watched a video on YouTube just to make sure that it was the same, same symptoms and things like that. So I YouTubed the video. I looked up the video, and when I was on YouTube, it was like myoclonic jerks. That's one. And the other one is infantile spasms. So when I was looking at myoclonic jerks, I was like, okay, yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. It looked just like that. And as I was reading, so I went from the YouTube video, I went to Google, I Googled myoclonic jerks, and I looked up, like the severity of it. And it was like myoclonic jerks is a involuntary spasm, but it doesn't affect the brain. It's just the muscles, and they'll eventually outgrow it. So I was like, Lord, please let this be what he has. Because when I read infantile spasms, it's similar to myoclonic jerks, but it affects your brain. And it's 3 different ways that you can get infantile spasms. It's 3 different categories that it falls under. And we'll talk about that when we talk about Kendall's hospital visit. But it's 3 different categories. And it's, so with myoclonic jerk is an involuntary spasm of the muscles. With infantile spasms is an involuntary movement of the muscles, contraction of the muscles, and also it affects your brain wave, which makes you developmentally delayed. So you'll be delayed in your development of speech, of your physical movement, just anything in aspects of you learning. So I was like, okay. So I'm reading, I'm looking up, researching, reading everything. I'm just we didn't go till I think like 9 that night, and we left Walmart at like 6 because I didn't want to go in there and say, can you guys figure it out for me? No, I want to tell you what I think it is, and then you go off that. That's the mindset that I had, because I felt like 2 weeks prior to that, when I first took him, if I would have known the information that I have known, instead of letting them decipher if it is or it isn't one thing, then I felt like it would have helped him. You can't go back in the past. You can't change it. Once it is set in stone, it is what it is. You can't bring tomorrow back. Tomorrow's gone. And that's the mindset that I have, and that's the mindset that I had then. So when I was going back, I wanted to make sure I went to a different hospital, And then I wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about when I went in there. So we're in a hospital bed, and he did not sleep. You can tell he was just so tired. He was like, he just looked so sad, and I felt so bad. And every time he tried to nod off, he'll just wake up crying. So I was like, oh my goodness. So I was just rocking him. And then he's so small. Like, he's small. He's 6 months, but he looked like he probably was like 2 to 3 months. And I was like, okay. So I went there. I was like, I told them, and they did their test, whatever. They said the same thing the other doctor said. And I was like, no. I said, I think it's this, because he's showing the same signs. I said, I don't know what test you guys have to do, but you guys have to do a different test. You have to. I said, because he's doing this, he's not eating, he's not sleeping. Every time he try to go to sleep, he wakes up. And then he did the first times that he did the jerk, it was like in 1, but then it was like a cluster of 3, and it just throughout that night it kept progressing. It went from 3 to 4 to 5. So I was like, oh my goodness. And it's like he just looked so helpless, and I felt so bad. So I was like, I need to tell you, and then you do what you need to do. So the doctor was like, okay, well, he was like, okay, well, let me see. So he left. And like 10 minutes later, he came back, and he was like, you know, everything came back normal, but the test that we have to do on him is not here. So he'll have to go to the children's hospital. And he was like, you can take an ambulance, or you can drive there. So in my mind, I'm like, it's just me here. Like, his dad flew back home to Virginia. So I was like, it's just me here. So I can't take an ambulance, because if I do, how I'm getting back? And Oklahoma City was an hour and a half away from where I lived, because I live by post. So I was like, I'll just drive. I'll drive. So he was like, okay, we'll have a room there for you when you get there. I'm going to go ahead and send all the orders off and things like that. So I went home. Before I left to go to OKC, I went home, packed his bags, packed me some clothes, and I drove there. He in the back seat. I had to stop like a few times because he was crying, and I wanted to make sure he was comfortable. And in the car, even to this day, Ken loves to drive. Let me go for a ride. He would sit there, and it would be peaceful, and he'll just look. And when we was driving there, I had to stop a few times to, like, feed him and change his diaper, but he was just calm. Like, even the nights when I could not sleep and I was going through the motions, I was like, I'm gonna take you for a ride. When I took him for a ride, I didn't sleep, but he did. He was just quiet, and he was just peaceful, and he just slept. And that's to this day right now. I don't know what it is about driving, but that's the only thing that seems to, like, calm him. And it calmed him that day. So we went to Oklahoma City. I didn't call anyone because I wanted to, for me to deal with stuff, I have to process it first. And so much was going on at one time, I really wasn't able to process it. So I drove there. They had the room, they did. And when I came there, the clusters was worse. It was like back to back. It was like he'll have a cluster probably like once a day, and it'll be once. Or when he did have it like 2 or 3, it'll be like that cluster every like 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, until it was like those 3 clusters, and it'll be like in increments of 10 minutes. Like, that's how severe it had become. So by the time we got there, it was bad. So they seen it. He had a lot of hair on his head. I let his hair grow out. So they had the EKG, the EEG. They had so much blood being taken away from him. And me just seeing him lay in the bed, I was like, oh my goodness. It was surreal. And it happened so fast. Like, by the time we got in the room, it was like, of course, they was waiting for us. And then the time that they had to prepare, they had everything and everybody on standby to do what they needed to do. Which is why I will always be grateful for the Children's Hospital in OKC. And if the Lord ever blessed me, I'm blessing them. I'm going to stop the video here. And I'm going to talk in the next video. I'm going to talk about what he has his hospital stay, who came, who didn't come, and things of that nature. Thank you guys for listening.